It's Wolf with a really quick video to just sort of showcase something that I think is really interesting and kind of a fun fact. So, to get right into it, the Nintendo Wii is a really interesting console in a whole bunch of ways, but one in particular is that it put a lot of developers and publishers and just video game company people in an awkward position. The thing about the Wii is that it is clearly underpowered compared to the other two consoles that were out at the time, the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. However, because Nintendo and also the fun gimmick of motion controls, it sold like wildfire. This created a whole bunch of scenarios where people wanted to bring their games to the Wii because it had such a huge install base, but it often wasn't as easy to port a game to the Wii as it was to the Xbox 360 or PS3 because the Wii was so much less powerful than those two consoles. In a whole bunch of scenarios, what ended up happening was they pretty much made demakes of games for the Wii, and some good examples of this are like every Call of Duty game released on the Wii. But some places decided to go the opposite direction and make games that were almost entirely different than their PC, PS3, and Xbox 360 counterparts, but still shared the same name. There's a number of examples for this, but in this video I'm just gonna kind of quickly mention 3 of them. So those are Dead Rising Chop Till You Drop, Need for Speed The Run, and Driver San Francisco. First up, I'm gonna talk a little bit about Dead Rising Chop Till You Drop. Of all the games that I'm gonna bring up in this video, this one is probably the most similar to the other versions of it because overall it is the same, but there's also a lot of gameplay mechanics that got changed. Despite owning this game, I haven't really played much of it, so if you want to know more about the specifics, there's various articles online about the differences and stuff. But to put it simply, so far as I know, the main difference between this version of the game and the other versions is that they just gave Frank a lot of guns. Just straight up, in the beginning of the game, where there's that scene where all the zombies first start breaking into the mall. In the original game, Frank just, has to run up to the stairs, or if you giddy and you actually get rescued by Otis. In this version of the game, Frank just whips out some hardware and starts blasting. From what I've read online, that's a pretty common theme throughout this version of the game, is just that there's a lot more guns than melee combat. Dead Rising's big thing on 360 was that it was, use anything as a weapon. You could pick up tons of stuff and hit zombies with it, but this version of the game isn't so much that way. And a big reason for that is because, so far as I know, it uses the same engine as Resident Evil 4, which is a third-person shooter. There's also various other differences between this version and other versions. I think there might be some plot stuff that's a little different, not anything too huge, but I think that there's some stuff that's cut or changed. There's also some zombie animals I've read online, there's a zombie poodle I think at some point. And another major thing is that the fight with the convicts in the other versions of the game, you have to avoid them or actually fight them. In this version, it's a quick time event. Next, I'm going to talk about Need for Speed The Run. So this one is also pretty similar to the other versions of it, kind of. The thing is, you could summarize any version of Need for Speed The Run as just big race across the country. The really weird thing about this game is that it has a different protagonist. The overall concept of the game is still the same, with big race across the country from San Francisco to New York City, but for some reason they decided to give it a different protagonist and a different story. There's also not cutscenes in this game, instead it's sort of animation things. And so far as I know, also, speaking of that, I just remembered, I'm pretty sure the Nintendo DS version of this game is kind of the same as the Wii version, but just with the differences you would expect in a mobile version. But yeah, instead of playing as Jack, you're playing as Matt this time, and I really don't know why they would have changed the plot for the game, because the plot of Need for Speed The Run in general is pretty straightforward, so I don't get why they didn't just keep it the same, and if they needed to simplify it, maybe cut out some scenes or something. That's the only thing I can think of, is that possibly, since it's on the Wii and the Wii is less powerful, maybe they wanted to shorten it or whatever, change the route across the country or something, and instead of trying to explain that with Jack, they just decided to pretty much rewrite the plot with somebody else. It is cool though to know that there's another version of Need for Speed The Run out there with a different plot, because I know for a lot of people, myself included, The Run is a really good Need for Speed game, and it's unique too because none of the other Need for Speed games, and not really any other racing games in general except for the Crew, include any sort of cross the country travel. Oh, and this version also includes tricks and stuff, so you can do barrel rolls in your car and stuff when you jump. Then last but absolutely not least is Driver San Francisco. While the Wii versions of Dead Rising and Need for Speed the Run had some similarities to the other versions, Driver San Francisco is pretty much an entirely different game. One of the big things with Driver San Francisco in the version on the PS3, 360, and PC was the whole shift mechanic, where Tanner can take over other cars by taking over the bodies of the drivers of those cars. In this version of the game, that mechanic is entirely gone. The story and overall setup of the game is also different than the other versions. I'm not exactly sure how, because I haven't really played much of the Wii version of this game, but I know that the story is pretty much totally different, and some of the just general gameplay mechanics and stuff from the little bit that I've played already, they seem pretty different as well. Which I suppose makes a lot of sense, since the other versions of the game were pretty heavily reliant on the shift mechanic for a lot of things. But this version of the game does have something totally unique to it, which is guns.
Your little patch. Many stories for the grandkids. So you could say I'm doing everyone a favor.
Officer Alvarez, please report your position. Over. Alvarez? Officer Tanner, do you copy?
That's a bit of a common theme in this video now, with the Wii version of Dead Rising also adding guns. It's kind of funny too, because I have the box of the game in front of me, and it even advertises the guns on the back of the box. There's down in the corner, it says use a range of weapons including shotguns, rifles, a rocket launcher, and your vehicle to take down dangerous criminals. Which is just like weird, because the other version of Driver San Francisco doesn't have guns at all, except for in cutscenes, I think. Like, not even enemy characters will even use guns. Another interesting thing about this game is that I've seen a number of people online say that this game actually feels more like a classic Driver game than the other version of Driver San Francisco, which makes sense, because even though I haven't really played any of the other Driver games besides just the PS3 version of Driver San Francisco, I do own, I think, Driver 1 and 2 for the PlayStation 1, and I've played a little bit of them, and even just from the short time playing those, you can kind of tell that the PS3, 360, and PC version of Driver San Francisco does kind of take the series in a little bit of a different direction, whereas this one seems to stay more true to what the original Driver games did. But anyway, that is pretty much it for the video. So that was 3 Wii games that I have found that are very different than the versions on other platforms. Hope everyone enjoyed the video, and if you know of any games that are kind of similar in the aspect of the version of it on a certain platform is like vastly different than other versions of it, leave them in the comments, and it'd be kind of cool to check some of those out actually. I'm really interested in stuff like that. So thanks for watching, see you guys in other videos, bye-bye, and I always forget to add this in too. Make sure to subscribe if you liked it, because I make videos like this sometimes.